And let's share the screen if it works for once. Okay, so that's the first point of the agenda. And then the next thing we have there is questions and issues, open forum. Does anyone have anything they want to start with?
Yes. So like the last time I said last time I was in the meeting, basically uh, I said that okay, we have a Kubernetes cluster at the Kubernetes cluster as a server, and then multiple edge devices which are Raspberry Pi devices running as Kafka single cluster. So currently what we have done is like okay, we have each Kafka clusters running on the Raspberry Pi, single Kafka cluster. However, the problem which we are facing right now is that they can only be exposed as either a node port or either as an internal IP address, like internal type. In which case, I'm finding it little difficult how to interact with that edge cluster, because like if I keep it internal, I I do not have the IP address of the Kafka broker. If I keep it as a node port, I can only deploy one Kafka cluster at the edge. So is there a way in which I can expose the Kafka broker at the edge so that it can be used by other services? If this makes sense, like yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't really understood the problem with the node ports.
So with the node port is like when I deploy them as a node port, like for example, let's say that I have specified 32,000 port number, specific port number for the edge devices. If I deploy one cluster at one edge, it works fine. But if I want to deploy another Kafka cluster on
Yeah,
another edge,
you would need to use different port numbers for each Kafka cluster.
yes, but like if you see it. Um, uh, I understand that okay, if we use different port numbers, it would be particularly fine. However, if you see it from the administration perspective, it becomes difficult to manage the number of ports. Because like for every edge, there would be a different port, and I can't generalize it. And like it would be a very much pain to remember that okay, which edge device has which port.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I
But
was wondering if there is a better way to do it. Like I thought that maybe what so like because like if we are deploying it as an internal cluster, like internal type, I was thinking that okay, maybe I can just do a SSH port forward to that particular IP, the pod's particular IP. But that is also very dangerous because then the advertised host name becomes a problem, and then the pod can change the IP address.
yeah, I don't think you can solve this easily without some networking magic.
Okay.
So yeah, I think to have in each edge to have the same address,
Yeah.
but
Same port.
within the same cluster, I think you would need to do some special networking magic or something. I'm not sure anyone here understands the networking well enough
Okay.
to be able to help with it. But basically, so if you use the internal interface,
Yeah.
internal listener, you can still override the advertised host names. So you can, for example, have in your Kafka configuration that
Yeah.
whatever the name of the Kafka cluster is,
Yeah.
then the advertised address should be always my broker port 9092 or whatever. But
Okay.
then you would need to make somehow sure that on the edge nodes, on the Raspberry Pis, that this address always routes to the right broker which is
Yeah.
running on the same node.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm not completely sure how to do that, to be honest.
Okay. Because the only way I could, because like if I try to access the Kafka broker, when it is a internal listener and I try to access the Kafka broker using a port forward, I get that, okay, it is unable to resolve the host name of the pod. And that's a understandable problem. So the only way to work around was that, okay, I, um,
So you have just single Kafka node there, right?
yes, on one edge device. Yes.
So if you use port forward for that, and
Yes.
let's say you have the kube cluster and then you have the Raspberry Pi local host,
Yeah.
and if you run the port forward there to let's say expose the port from the pod from the internal listener,
Yeah.
and always expose it locally on, I don't know, port 10,000,
Yeah.
whatever, just a random number.
Yeah.
Then basically you can configure it in the Kafka CR
Okay.
in the advertised host and advertised port configuration.
Okay.
You can basically override the default one, which is being used by default, and you can
Okay.
basically say there, okay, advertise localhost 10,000.
Okay.
And
So
then when the client connects through the port forward
yeah.
to the localhost 10,000,
Okay.
then it should be forwarded to the pod, but it
Yeah.
will be also the address the pod is advertising. So I think that should actually work. Yeah.
Okay. So I would check that and I would probably come back to you on that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Ping me if you wouldn't. It's in the docs, but if you don't know how to configure, how to
Yeah.
override advertise host, just ping me on Slack or something. And
All right. Okay. Thank you.
but so yeah, you would still need to figure out how to deploy the port forward there
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
sure that it works,
Yeah.
and also make sure that it's always pointing to the right pod, because still the
Yeah.
pod name will be basically, you will need different Kafka cluster name on
Yeah.
each of the edge nodes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so the pod name will be always different. So that's
Yeah.
something you would still need to figure out.
Yes, so like for that, what I'm trying to do is like because when on the sorry, when on the Kubernetes server, when we do kubectl get pods, it would tell you that the pods of like it would tell you the IP address of the pod of Kafka. So what I'm thinking is like I would run something like Puppet configuration, which basically uh, takes that output and set up a port forward on the edge. So yeah, I'm like I haven't worked it out, but yeah, I think I have an idea about how we can go forward for that.
Uh, yeah, you should use the service IP address, not the pod IP address. The
Uh,
pod IP address is not stable.
okay, the service IP address. Uh, I would look into it and I might ask more questions later on this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's quite. hmm. Yeah, I think you need to think about how to do the forward, because if you do it based on pod IP address, the pod
Hmm.
IP address is not stable and will change when for some reason the pod
Yeah.
restarts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might not, if it's maybe the only thing going on, but in general it's not stable and it might change. So that will basically break the port forward, and you would
Yes.
need to have this running in some loop and kind of
Yes.
checking regularly
Correct. Correct.
uh, the addresses.
So you are suggesting that okay, maybe we can create a service which always point to that particular port, yeah, or
Yeah,
something.
so yeah, something like that, I guess. Because if you
Okay.
would have service, the service gets IP as well, and the
Yeah.
service IP that's basically stable, that doesn't change unless you delete the service and create a new service.
Okay. All
So
right.
even when the pod behind it restarts, that should
Okay.
be fairly stable.
Okay. All right. I would have a look at it. Thank you.
Hey, Akub, I would like to go
Hey,
next. Thanks for joining the call. Uh, though we discussed over the Google chat of Red Hat, the other side of it, couple times, but I have along with me Gerrit, who is worldwide team lead from IBM, whose primary focus is Linux on Power ecosystem. And we wanted to discuss and bring up the topic of how we can add Power architecture as one of the architecture for that can be supported by Strimzi as a whole, and then how we can go about from the long-term support aspect of it.
Yeah, so I think what I mentioned on the PRs which you opened,
Right.
is that probably the main thing we need to figure out is how that might work with respect to testing and so on.
Okay.
Because like right now we have absolutely no experience with the platform. We have no test environments with the platform. And I don't think it's supported on Azure, which is our main CI for the operators. So I think the point number one is to kind of figure out how this can be plugged into the automated testing and automated builds and so on.
Okay.
So I can answer part of that. Am I coming through clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and my role here is the overall ecosystem lead for Power. We can get you access to Power hardware. That's not an issue at all. In fact, I don't know if you're familiar with Oregon State University's open source lab, but we can give you a link there, and you can actually create your own VMs. And they they do it under OpenStack, so you can decide if you just want a VM or if you want OpenStack console, if you're going to set up multiple to do like multiple pods or Kubernetes testing or something. They also have a Jenkins service there. Probably not the right thing for you. It sounds like when you said Azure and you said GitHub, I'm assuming you're using GitHub Actions for testing. And you're right, there is no Power support in GitHub Actions. What we are currently using is Travis for that. And you can actually, even though you're running GitHub Actions, we can probably help set up and get running a Travis instance, at least for the time being, for Power. We are working on, we would like to have GitHub Actions support, but the Power is almost like Intel from an operational point of view. But there are a few things like .NET is a self-hosting compilation build environment, and all of the self-hosting components are Intel based. We have some thoughts on how to break out of that and get a port of that to Power, but until we have .NET on Power, we will not have GitHub Actions on Power. And that
so we are not using GitHub Actions. We are using the Azure pipelines.
Oh, Azure pipelines, is that based on Jenkins then, or what is it based on?
No, that's Azure pipelines, I guess. That's kind of Microsoft Azure Cloud has
Right, yeah, I'm familiar
Azure
with Azure.
pipelines as the it has the Azure pipelines as kind of the CI/CD tooling.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one, and I actually am usually on top of most of the CI environments, but I know from GitHub and Microsoft, they're pushing GitHub Actions pretty hard, which is why it shows up for us all the time. But pipelines we could look at, I'm assuming it's the same issue. Azure is all Intel. They have no interest in other architectures. It's just not their thing. So when we need, Power support, we do have to find it elsewhere. Same thing with other architectures. We partner up with our Strimzi or S390X folks, and they also have Travis CI support. They have ability for you to get VMs and stuff. But those are things that we can definitely do. We can get you access to hardware. We can set up a CI. It's not the same as what you're using. Running two in parallel is not uncommon. It's becoming more common now because people do want to test things like Mac OS or ARM or Power S390X, whatever it might be, and Azure usually doesn't get you there. Go ahead.
So I think we need to separate different things in the CI, right? So in general, we have, for example, so we have different projects. That's the first thing. So the bridge and the OAuth library, which I think you found out already, that's basically using Travis today. And yeah, I guess we had some thoughts about moving it to Azure as well. but I don't think it's necessarily a problem to have this run on Travis because this runs on Travis. The main problem is when you get to the operators is that that doesn't run on Travis because Travis basically, yeah, it doesn't really work well in general for running something like Minikube and running Kafka with multiple nodes inside this Minikube because it simply doesn't have enough resources. But it also doesn't have enough runtime to run the system tests and so on. So I think for the operators, one thing would be to deal with the build, which I guess anyway needs to be dealt with in Azure because you would want to have multi-architecture images built. So that cannot be done in a separate build itself, I think. And then
So if you're doing Azure builds, are you doing cross compiles then? Or are you trying to do, you can't do native builds then, right?
with native builds, you mean?
So native meaning using all the tool chain, Go or C++ or C or whatever it is
So-
on Power as opposed to cross compile on Intel to Power?
Well, we don't do any cross compile, right? So first of all, we don't do anything with Power. So we have absolutely no experience with that. But in general, the stuff which we have is Java. And right now we really support Intel only. And what we have, for example, for ARM is really because that has a similar problem. We don't really have any environments. So we let users, we basically make it easier for users to build their own images for ARM, but we do not provide any official Strimzi images for ARM.
So we would honestly like to get to the point of having official images for Power.
Right.
Which is what we'd like, opening statement. Go ahead.
So that would mean that we would need to first have this integrated into the Strimzi build on Azure, because ultimately there you need to build the multi-arc images to have the support, I think. And so Strimzi is written in Java, so I don't think there's really any cross-compile issue per se. And I think in general it should work, but you need to build the multi-platform images because you need to have the Power image and the Intel image and so on. So that's, I think, the first issue which would need to be dealt with. And then the second one is that to be able to actually test it, we would need to be able to run our system tests, which right now, again, are running on Azure. And it's basically, Jakub Stejskal, I don't see him on the call. But I think right now we have 8 different system test pipelines covering different aspects. And I think they are usually running between 2 and 3 hours each. So that's overall something like, what, 16, 20 hours of system testing. That doesn't if that doesn't run necessarily 10 times per day, that's not a big issue, but we need to be able to run it and to pass these in order to be able to produce the official images, because without being able to test the images, we can't really produce anything.
So I hear you. And I don't have a problem getting that much Power hardware capacity available for you guys to run this. In fact, OSL, like I said, has most of it. I could also set up something on the IBM cloud. We have a whole bunch of Power hardware there, probably enough to, well, just say a lot. So we can give you access there. The key would be that Harsha or Krishna on the call, or Abhijit on the call, can probably work with you guys to set up the builds and kind of do in parallel. If they were to do that and work with you on something at OSL and get that set up to be kind of in parallel, at least for the testing and the build on Azure, what else would be a blocker?
Yeah, so I think the build is just something. What's the first issue? And yeah, so just to make it clear, just because we run the Intel system tests today on Azure, it's okay if the power system tests are running on Jenkins or something else, right? It doesn't need to be integrated into Azure. So that's fine. Probably if you have the hardware, then it's easy to set up their Jenkins or whatever. But then the other problem is that, yeah, to be honest, we do not have the capacity to handle this, right? So we are willing to support you in this effort, but this really needs to be a long-term commitment from your side to help with this and help to maintain this. And if something doesn't work, then to go and look into this and help to resolve the issues, help to test it and so on. Because so it, even if we get the access to the resources to run the tests, I don't think we really have the capacity to actually work on these things and make sure that the tests are passing, and not really just decide that we have to delete the whole thing once the first test starts failing. So I think that's the second important part, is about the long-term commitment to doing this and to help to kind of drive this through and maintain it and making sure it works.
Yeah, and I again, I hear you on that. So making long-term commitments is hard, right? We're involved in something like 8,000 GitHub projects with resources of about 20 people. Some of this overlapped with some of our Red Hat partner, the Red Hat people that we work with on various projects. So maybe it's more than 20, but this is the sort of thing where we would want to stay involved. The question would be around how much support effort is actually needed. And one of the things I've seen from the number of projects that we've been involved in is that the number of regressions that are power specific are across hundreds of projects at least, maybe in the handful. There aren't many things anymore. Since I don't know if you guys know, but power went to Little Indian back almost, I guess, 6 years ago. So with Little Indian, almost everything builds pretty much the same as on Intel. All of the distros, all the major distros support power distribution. So you've got most of your core components there. Most of the rest of the dependencies, my team winds up picking up and porting and making available build scripts or containers or the like. We would definitely be responsive to power specific issues. And I can say that assuming that there are going to be very few after it's stabilized. There is so little different from an operational point of view on power. The things that we sell it for, different instruction set and all, but it's for scalability, it's for overall performance, it's for reliability and availability. Things like the Apple Store run on power because of its reliability and stability. The United States Federal Reserve runs on power, right? Because of its availability, its resilience, that sort of thing. Eight of the top 10 global banks run on power. It's a huge set of things, and we try to keep all of the environment up to date for all of those end users. And as a result, we tend to be pretty responsive to these issues and have a lot of experience with, the number of failures post setup. The place where we run into some issues sometimes are things that are under very active development. The place that the way that gets simplified is if the CI is running against each submission and will tell you if power works or not. Most developers, when they look at the errors, the errors anymore are pretty straightforward. It's like either a missing package or maybe we don't have the latest version of Go in Travis. That's unlikely since I've got a team that works directly with Travis and we keep the images up to date, but occasionally we do find stuff there. So I'm trying to get to answering your question about long-term commitment. The answer is yes, and we do so under the assumption that once stabilized, once the build environment is stabilized on power, we expect that there are very few issues and we would be responsive to those if they are power specific. Does that make sense? And I know I'm giving you way too much context, but I want you to be able to see where we are too and how we can maybe help out here, work together.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone from us has any experience with power, so it's hard for us to judge how many problems there would be or wouldn't be once kind of everything is built. So yeah,
I think we just have
think-
to give it a go,
yeah.
don't we?
yeah.
And as long as we've got people that we can reach out to on your side when we have problems, then I think that's something that we could probably make work. As you say, would expect to see more problems in the early days, and obviously you'd sort of be more available, I guess, at that point. But as you say, once things were stabilized, then I can imagine that we wouldn't really see any problems that were power specific, in which case, as long as we sort of got some sort of contact details, should we find something, I think we could make it work on a sort of how the sort of relationship works, as it were.
Okay, that's ideally what I would love to hear. The two resources right now are on this call, Abhijit and Krishna, although we call him Harsha usually. But those two would be your first point of contact and would be the ones to help set things up initially. And I would say that's for the, let's say, the near term, the next 6 months or so. Beyond that, if they're, we move people around a lot. We do have, we used to have a mail alias that we used to bring our attention to stuff, but we'll have to find a way to make sure we get notified if there's a power specific regression. And I'm not sure if that's just to monitor the GitHub tree and CI failures from the power side. We get a lot of false positives is why I hesitate here. If a build breaks on Intel and then breaks on power, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a power problem, right?
Of course.
So
Yeah,
we need to sort through the ones that are actually not Intel bugs before we actually want to pick up the keyboard and start diagnosing. But once we're through some of that and figuring it out, yeah, I think we can be there. We can be responsive. And
yeah,
we do the same, by the way, in the Kubernetes community broadly. We obviously work with OpenShift. We work with a lot of these, well, a lot of the Apache projects the same way. So, it's a pretty established model.
I can see one way, for example, to, I don't know, having some Slack channel or mailing list or something, which we use to kind of sync when there is some issue which is only on power and so on.
Yeah, that would be perfect. And again, either myself or we have what we call a functional ID, and here it's kind of like it's an IBM poor example of a mailing list. But we have a few people that are signed up to that, myself one of them, to go assess anything like this, and so we can share that as well once we're set up and make sure that there is somebody standing by to take a look.
So have you done this effort already on Kafka? Does Kafka itself work on power without any problems?
Yes. Now I'd have to check if it's top of tree works currently, but we have ported repeatedly. We have submitted back all of our changes. As far as I know, everything's been accepted. We do run some regular testing. I don't remember what the test harness is for Kafka. We also test Kafka internally a lot. It's embedded in some of our major products going out over the next couple years. So Kafka stays at the top of the list. I think Strimzi is going to move right up there in kind of the same way for its own reasons. But yes.
Just a couple of other sort of things which hopefully won't be a problem. But we use a thing called Teeny. I assume that's a Go thing, I think, isn't it? And presumably that is available. And the other sort of binary thing that springs to mind is OpenSSL.
So we have OpenSSL. OpenSSL is an issue on our Z brand side for some reason. I think it's a licensing issue or something with it. But we have OpenSSL on Power. Teeny, I'm not familiar with. Go, we are 100% compatible with Intel top of tree. So anything, if it's written in Go, should be not a problem.
I think the PPC 64LE is the shortcut for Power, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Teeny has on GitHub, they have their own builds for that.
They do, yeah.
So I would expect that to work.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's pretty typical that we have made most dependencies work because those dependencies are common across a lot of packages. So,
Sure.
a lot of this stuff that's out there, we have ported. There are a few communities that are, shall we say, less responsive, like Elasticsearch. If you're not familiar with elastic.co, they are unaccepting of power. Therefore, we have to maintain our own. We're working with Amazon on the open distro stuff. Maybe we'll go that way. We don't know, but that is an example of one of the rare communities that is, shall we say, problematic. We do a lot of this stuff,
Yeah, I guess
day in,
they are
day
not
out.
problematic just in this aspect.
Yeah. So any other questions? And let me also ask Krishna here. Is everything that they've asked about in terms of setting up the build and everything else something that you and Abhijit can handle?
Oh yeah, sure. We can do that, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would expect so. That's, like I said, that's all well within our wheelhouse. So
Yeah.
we can move forward on that. We can actually move forward, set it up in parallel. Maybe even do a walkthrough on one of these calls with you guys just to show you what all's out there. Once it's set up, kind of give you some context.
Hmm?
The big thing, you guys, and I hear this a lot. You guys said, you've got no experience with power. When you're logged into a power machine, it's really hard to know that you're on power versus Intel. Linux is Linux. That's been our goal from the very beginning. There are some differences in low level register management. There's obviously differences in compilers and stuff. We run into a few things with some translators. Mostly they depend on Intel binaries somewhere underneath, and we've had to go find and fix all of those. But once you're on a system, it is doggone hard to tell that you're not on Intel. So you may have more power, knowledge, and experience than you realized. So anything else you guys wanted to cover? Any other issues that, and I think one of the steps here is we maybe get you set up. And I don't know if it would be good if somebody from the community were the ones to set up a VM at OSL, so you guys had the keys and had control over it. We have no problem supporting you on that. We can create it if necessary, but I like to make sure that the communities have control. I don't want to be the one that controls and then we get out of sync and don't know what's going on. That's preferred, and Krishna and Abhijit can walk you through that. I can give them a little support in the background, but if you need a machine or machines at OSL for testing, simply I can send you the request form. You file it. You can list me as a contact. Approval should be pretty much automatic with that. And
Yeah, maybe we should take it step by step. And I think we have now the PRs opened on the OAuth and on the bridge, which are kind of some of the components. So maybe we should finish first that, and then we should maybe move on to the operators, which will be a bit harder.
And
Krishna, Abhijit, that makes sense to you?
it does. Yes, great. I think OAuth and Bridge are as of today on Travis, so we can target to those. And then all of the CI/CD test passes on Power as of now, right? We have our internal jobs that ensure the top of the tree is working as of today, as we speak, right? So we can work on that first, and then we can move towards the operator and target it for power systems accordingly.
Sounds good. So, and any other questions, roadblocks for me? I want to make sure these guys are set to move forward, that you guys are willing to work with them. It sounds like things are, start off, try it out, see how it goes, and then maybe reevaluate in, I don't know, Krishna, any guesses, like a couple of weeks to get some of this set up and maybe review it, or
I think OAuth and Bridge we can review in the next community call if required, because that works, right? So the matter is we can just do a sanity check by doing again the CI/CD test for those accordingly, and then we can provide some sort of logs to bring in the confidence, and they can move forward accordingly.
Does that make sense with you guys on the Strimzi side?
Sounds good to me. Jakob?
Yeah, sounds good to me as well.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I think we've consumed enough time. I'm sure you've got other issues you want to cover, but reach out to Krishna or Abhijit if you've got questions. If you need my help for anything, just let me know. I've got access to all the resources. I'll make sure that Krishna and Abhijit have no issues getting those, but we'll move this forward on our side.
Sure, and then just if we are on the Slack channel of Strimzi, right? So we are reachable over there as well. So we are available at any point in time.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks a lot, Jacob. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming and answering the questions and so on.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Have a great day, guys.
Okay, do we have any other topic for the questions and issues, or do we move forward? Okay, then I guess we have a bunch of issues and PRs to discuss. So yeah, I think this was the first one, where a long time ago we opened the issue about using the same defaults for the topic and the user operator. And I think the main difference is in the zookeeper timeout and in the reconciliation interval. So I guess I wanted to discuss whether it makes sense to have the same defaults or not have the same defaults and so on.
Yeah, this is the session timeout for Zookeeper, I assume.
I think that's the one which made me, I wouldn't say concerned, but which made me raise the question, because I think the reconciliation interval, that doesn't really matter that much. That sounds quite straightforward, that it should not hurt anything if it's using the same, but the Zookeeper time mode is quite different.
Well, there's no reason why they should be different though. And there's no reason why they should be different from the Kafka brokers. They should in principle all be the same, I think. In which case we should, I guess, make them the same as the default for the Kafka brokers, which a few releases ago, I think, got bumped up to, was it 18 seconds or something?
Just trying to find it.
Anyway, it got bumped up from something really quite low to something quite a lot bigger based on exactly sort of people running this stuff in the cloud on Kubernetes and so on.
You mean upstreaming Kafka?
Yeah, yeah. For some reason, 18 is what my mind is.
I'm actually wondering if we have our own defaults for this for Kafka as well. But I can't figure out where we would store it. Kafka. Well, anyway, so yeah, we sync the reconciliation interval in topic operator to 120 seconds, because that's what's also used in the cluster operator, I guess. So that makes more sense than changing the user operator.
Sorry, I was just looking it up. It is 18 seconds. You're saying sync it where in the cluster
I
operator?
was saying the reconciliation interval, that should probably be then 120 seconds in both, because that's also what's used in the CO.
Yes. Okay, I can go along with that.
And the Zookeeper timeout, You said Kafka use 18, so do we want to use 18 here as well?
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable.
Okay. So in the meantime, before I edit this comment and edit it to the agenda, it looks like we have actually PR fixing it. So we need to put that as a review comment there as well. I can do it later. Yeah, this is the right way. This is not the right way. Anyway, I will put it later there as a comment. So the next issue which I thought we might want to discuss was this one. So we do the upgrade now completely differently. And the specific information about finishing the changes to the message format and interbroker protocol version, we have that in the condition warnings now.
Yes.
So I think we don't really need events about
I
this,
agree.
or
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the time all we had in the documentation was look for these lines in the log file, which always felt a bit rubbish.
yeah. So that's closed. Next one is actually closed as well. Who was following my steps and watching my screen?
We do it just to spite you, Jakob.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a fun pastime for the rest of the team.
I guess Kate or someone did that. So then there are some PRs which I put here. Tom, this
Yeah, I think.
OpenSSL thing, that's yours.
Yep.
And it seems to have one nit from Paolo. But otherwise it's approved, so maybe you can find some time to get it closed.
Yeah.
Or I mean merged.
Yeah, I mean, I've carried on working on this in the meantime, so I think there are a few other changes, but they can come in a later PR. I can get that merged today.
Okay. That was this one, I guess. So this one was about the reconcile state metric, and we don't have Shubham here, but it's since I'm not following that much, it's not really clear to me what the current state is and what needs or doesn't need to be done. Standa, maybe I guess your approval is missing. Maybe this is something
I was trying.
you can look
trying
at
these
and get it
changes
finished.
locally, and there's an issue with topic operator. The status is set correctly, but if you use some topic with invalid configuration, so the status is set correctly, but then when we set another wrong configuration, like replication factor bigger than number of Kafka pods, the status is set to ready, and after periodic reconciliation, it's set to the correct status. So there is time window of maybe 2 minutes when the status is wrong.
Does Shubham need some help figuring out where to fix that?
I was trying to figure this out some time ago, and I was not successful, so maybe he needs help as well.
Okay.
So who's gonna try to help with it? You, Standa, or Tom, or?
I'd be grateful if Standa could have another go and then ping me if he is still stuck.
Yeah, I can try.
If you can do that. Thanks, Nenda.
Okay. And I don't think we have Tom Cooper, but so it looks like Shubham is now working on this. So I think this one can be maybe closed because I think he has now new PR with the rebase and some additional fixes. So yeah, but Tom is not here, so I guess I will check offline with him and close it if it makes sense to him. Okay, anyone has any other PRs or issues they want to discuss? Okay, then I wanted to do update on the inclusive language because I was working on the renaming of the main branches to master branches, the other way around, master branches to main branches. So the current state of that is that we have still 3 repositories to rename, and I need someone to review one of the PRs. So if someone can have a look at this one, that would be great. That's some updates to the website repository itself. And then once they are merged, that should be ready. But I also identified some more things which use the master word in one way or another. And I wanted to check with how to deal with them best. So one was on the website. We have now the master documentation. So basically the render documentation for the latest software from the master / the main branch. And that is also the master in the URL. And I was thinking if we should rename it, what would be the word we should use there? Because I think in this context, the main it can make it easily quite confusing. Because apart from the main branch, it can mean also main documentation or something like that. So I guess anyone has any ideas how to call it and what to use in the URL?
I could ask about that, Jakob. There might be some policy that we're applying for certain words.
Okay, so yeah, maybe you can ask, maybe everyone can think about it and we can try to get back to it next time. Yeah. And then the second thing, which Paul actually relates to you as well, is that the books, they always start with the master.adoc file. So yeah, in theory, maybe we can think about renaming that as well. But yeah, again, we should probably agree on what the right name for that would be.
Yeah, I've made a note of these, so I'll ask around and get back to you.
I think primary is sometimes used to replace master. I don't know whether that would be appropriate here.
Yeah, especially with the master.adoc, it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest, what we use, because it's not really visible on the outside. So yeah, I think whatever we choose. And it's similar for the URL. And then I guess maybe Tom edit the Mirror Maker one deprecation, or Was it someone else?
It was me. I just wanted to mention that. Maybe if Tom has any comments to this.
So as I recall, there was some work done upstream Kafka to get rid to make sure that the language was inclusive. So I don't know, is that what we're referring to here for the Kafka Mirror Maker custom resource or something?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we're saying that we know that Mirror Maker 1 is probably going to be formally deprecated in Kafka 3.0. So I think it'll hang around until Kafka 4.0, and therefore if we've got terminology talking about blacklists in our custom resources, then we should, I guess, deprecate and replace for the time being, even though we don't expect that the Kafka Mirror Maker resource might well disappear before we actually got rid of the property name in the custom resource. I think, in principle, that's the right thing to do.
So I think, so actually for the Mirror Maker 2, I think there is some change which is done in Kafka 2.7, if I remember correctly. So we can, in theory, use it once we move to once we remove Kafka 2.6. But for Mirror Maker 1, I think that's still marked as in progress. There's still open PR for it, I think. Which also
Upstream PR.
Yeah. I mean in Kafka.
Yeah.
Which also doesn't seem to deal with backwards compatibility, I think.
Okay.
Which maybe is why it's not merged.
Okay, I'll have a look. You can make that as an action for me.
Anyway, as you said, it's being.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the upstream Kafka, this has all been done. So I'm surprised that you say that hasn't been, because.
Wait, let me.
I'm pretty sure someone from actually sent an email around, sort of pointing to the last few remaining places, and.
So at least from the KEEP. So this is the Kafka
you're right.
Jira which links to the KEEP, and there still seem to be some of them which are in progress.
Yeah, you're quite right.
You actually fixed one of them.
Yeah, I did.
So either maybe it's issue in the Jira tracking that someone did that in some PR but didn't link it to the Jira.
Yeah, or maybe it's not been resolved or whatever. I'll have a look. Sorry, which Jira was that? Sorry. 102.
Copy the link into the meeting minutes.
Thanks, Jakob.
And then actually we have one more thing which we have in Strimzi, but I didn't edit it there. There's just issue for it because, yeah, I don't think there's that much to discuss, or at least I didn't want it to discuss that much around it. But in the cruise control, we talk about master goals, which, yeah, should be fairly simple rename in the documentation, I think.
Okay, so we just need an issue to fix that, presumably.
Yeah. So that looks like it for the agenda today. Does anyone have anything else?
I wanted to ask about something that may be obvious, but not to me. There's been a couple new people putting commits in, and I noticed that they aren't part of the Strimzi organization, so they can't set milestones or ask for reviewers. That's purposeful, right?
Well, so GitHub doesn't allow everyone. That's the standard GitHub setting, basically. Not everyone can set milestones and request reviews and so on. If we have people who expect to do some more work, if they ping us with on Slack or something with their GitHub IDs, we can add them to this contributors group, which basically doesn't have the rights to, I don't know, merge PRs and so on, but they can request reviews and assign milestones and things like that.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Thanks.
Is it documented somewhere that people can ask us to do that? Because people won't ask if they don't know that they can ask, if you see what I mean.
I don't think it's documented.
We should find somewhere, I think, if there is somewhere.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure it's that critical. Like, it's normal that when you contribute to some project that you cannot do these things.
Yeah, but if people know that they can ask, it just, you know, it makes it feel a little bit less like it's an us and them type situation.
Yeah, and
you know, it helps people sort of feel that they are involved and actually part of a real sort of community rather than, yeah, your code is welcome.
You created a task for yourself.
Yep. So I have.
Should I edit to the agenda, to the meeting minutes?
Yeah, because I normally send myself tasks from the meeting minutes. Thanks, Jakob.
Well, I didn't assign any of these tasks to you because if you want, I can do it. But it's a public document, so I'm not sure how many bots are scraping it for email addresses and so on.
I do it anyway, so it's fine. Thanks, Jakob.
Wait, I edit to the minutes as well. Does it suggest anything? No, it doesn't. So, anyone, anything else?
Just quickly, Jakob, going back to the inclusive language updates, just need a couple of lines in the contributor guide. Maybe just to say any contributions, we just make people aware that that's something that they would need to consider.
Do you have a look at it?
Yeah, I can have a look at it, yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. Anyone, anything else? Sounds like not. This was actually a long meeting. We are even over the time. So thanks everyone for attending, and see you around, I guess.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye all.
Thanks. Bye.